This is WPSL Port St. Lucie, the talk of the Treasure Coast.
Still social distancing? Take WPSL, WSTU, and the Power of Talk radio with you digitally on TuneIn or Alexa at home, office, or car.
It's 11:06 at WPSL 1590, the talk of the Treasure Coast. You're on Ask a Rabbi.
Hello, everyone, and I guess I should have this a little bit closer to me. So, I hope everyone is doing well. It's another beautiful Florida Friday. Welcome to Juneteenth, a very important day in our history as a nation. And want to yell that out to everyone. Everybody deserves to be treated like a full person. You know?
Well, that's
bottom
common
line.
sense.
Yeah. You know, God created us all, right? and you know, that's certainly true for the Abrahamic faiths that talk about Adam and Eve being the ancestors of everyone. There's a reason why it's one family, folks. One family. And, yeah, we're all human beings. It's worth noting that skin color and characteristics make up less than 0.1% of the genetic material in the human genome. Yeah. So, yeah.
Interesting stuff.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah. We're 99.9% something else and not connected to skin color. So, yeah. Or eye shape or any of those things. So, you know, folks are folks, whether they're green, yellow, purple. Again, that doesn't mean that racialism, and I am using that term, racialism, the artificial construct of applying race to people because there's only one human race.
Oh, like the Jewish race.
Like,
you
yeah,
mentioned last week.
Right, the Jewish race. There is not a Jewish race. Hitler is not the definer of science. I'm sorry. You know, he's just not. It's that simple. You can use any artificial tool to wreak havoc on human beings. The whole racialism issue is aimed at controlling who's in and who's out. Something easy and obvious so that a smaller group that somebody fits into works. Now, it's worth noting, right, that Hitler was into something called eugenics. That's really what's on the underside of that. Something called eugenics, the idea that we can breed superhuman beings. Right. And, you know, unfortunately, some American scientists thought that was a really cool idea, that we could engineer human beings to be better.
Blonde and blue-eyed?
Blonde and blue-eyed, which, you know, clearly Hitler fit the category. Not, you know, kind of reminds me of, you know, the axe saying to the forest, I'm like you because, you know, I'm out of wood. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, my.
Yeah. So, you know, and this is one of the questions that I ask my class, because people don't really know the history of Germany. They really don't. Most Americans never really study it other than to say they're the enemy or were the enemy, and now we're friends. And we are friends. We are friends with the country of Germany. Israel and Germany are good friends, share a lot of technology, work together all the time. The number of Mercedes in Israel always astounded me. Also because of what they cost, but you know.
There was a book, and it was like the 70s. Should a Jew buy a Volkswagen?
I've had
one.
It
was a best-selling book.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there going, what? I had to read it. I mean,
well, you know, if I think that's one of the big issues. Okay, and we're dealing with that. With you know, we need to remember the lessons of Juneteenth. But we should not penalize Jefferson's grandchildren for what Jefferson did. They have the right to make their own mistakes and not be blamed because of history. And, you know, no, we should not put up statues to people who were horrible. And then that's why some of the statues are coming down. as somebody pointed out, we don't put a statue of a rat up to remember the plague. Also a significant part of history.
Wait a minute, I've seen that statue.
Frogs, yeah. Right,
frogs are in the building right now.
Yeah, well, we got rid of that little one. He went outside.
Okay, thank you.
He's wrestling with a little bit of dust he picked up on the floor. Yeah. For those who don't know, we had a little rescue of a frog just right before the show. And, I like getting the Florida natives back outside so they've got a fighting chance. They do have to work through things, though. But, so there is this balance, right? We shouldn't continue to hate folks. We shouldn't continue to ostracize them because of what ancestors did. We need to move forward. I can remember my father buying a Ford. Similar kind of thoughts. Do I support the children of one of the biggest anti-Semites in the U.S.? Ooh, and he reasoned through it. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, right. And where he got to was, yes, there is a root of the money and the company in what Henry Ford built. And it's a car that he happened to like. And the people running the company now may still have some of those tendencies, but they're not expressing them the same way. And as long as they're lawfully abiding by the rules, then they're not practicing, even if they harbor those opinions. And this is a country where people are entitled to opinions, even if, in my opinion, those opinions are horribly wrong. Notice how I couched that. Right? People are entitled to opinions.
It's fascinating that you're saying racialism rather than racism.
Yes. Well, because racism implies that race is a valid construct. It's not. It's an artificially contrived device to try to segregate human beings into categories into which they don't really belong. Okay. Now, let's look at the black-white issue. A big part of that gets back to, let's go to Ireland, right? You've got white Protestants against white Catholics. That really was not about religion. It was about who had the money and the power and who didn't.
Oh, I thought it was Catholic and versus English.
That happened to overlap the economic issue.
Oh.
Ooh. And
follow the money, right?
Follow the money, right, because money is shorthand for power, right? Those who are rich think they have the right to make the rules. There's also, the line out of Tebia, when you're rich, they think you really know, right? I'm sorry. No, just having the accident of being born into a wealthy family does not make you smarter. In fact, one could argue that...
Do we have any examples of that today?
Of course not.
I'm sorry.
Every organization battles that issue in their own ways, whether it's large like a country or small like a synagogue. No, being rich does not mean you know more. It just means you have more resources at your disposal. And in fact, the easier it is to be childish. Ooh, there you go.
Another shot.
Another shot, yeah. So, we are enjoined, right, in the book of Leviticus, and Jesus picks that up, right? Love your neighbor as you love yourself. Love each person. Everybody is your neighbor. There's no, that doesn't mean keep the whatevers out of your neighborhood. I'm sorry. That's not what that means. It doesn't mean select close neighbors that you think you can love. Right? It means love each human being as a child of God, as something that God has breathed life into, that is entitled to life. Now, that doesn't mean that they're entitled to run around and harm people. Nobody's entitled to that. Not the radical right and not the radical left. You need a right and a left wing to fly, folks. We really do need two sides to things because, as that's how we function. We have to look at different things. We have to be able to examine issues left and right and look at different things. And so, take some more work.
How do your students view the concept, the racialism concept?
Students,
do they even see it?
They don't see it anywhere near, in general, they don't see it anywhere near as much as their parents do, because they have grown up more together, and when they use their intellect at all, they notice that skin color is not a big deal, right? There are classic examples all over the place of little kids saying, we want to look like twins, we want to wear the same clothes, and and their skin color is different, because they don't see that. They don't need to see that. It doesn't matter, right? Probably the most appalling thing that I have heard over and over and over again in the police brutality claims is when a cop says, you match the description. What was the description? A black male. It's like, hello? Could you picture them stopping every Caucasian because a Caucasian male did something? Right.
It's funny you mentioned that. I remember when Carol went to work at NBC, and their handbook, when you're talking about suspects, don't go there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it that's like saying, well, and I, excuse me, I did the same thing. It was interesting. Because I did speak out at a couple of different events. Not recently, I haven't done much, but
nobody has in the last several months.
Not in the last several months. But no, that's not true. Protesters have, but
okay, gotcha. Yep.
But I did go there when I was in Ohio. There was legislation banning pit bulls, the American pit bull, on the grounds that that was a violent breed. And, I can remember standing up in front of city council and saying, I'm sorry. I wouldn't personally own one because I'm a poodle person. I love poodles. But I also know that poodles can be raised to be mean, or they can be raised to be nice. It's not a function of the breed. It's a function of a couple of things. Can you have a dog that has a violent tendency? Yes, you can. For whatever reasons, you don't know all the things that happened. You don't know, what happened to form its little head. And I swear I look at my dogs and I go, what are you thinking? And I get this blank stare that says, I'm not doing much of anything. I'm just having fun. So the idea of banning an entire breed because a couple of, right, there's this sensationalism that happens around certain things. And and I really get that. I'm going to take a left-handed turn here that people might not expect. I remember being a traffic watch pilot. Okay, my checkered, crazy career. I flew an airplane for KQV and WDVE, its sister FM station.
Pittsburgh.
Yeah, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. The radio station that tried to bring me down with a bunch of balloons.
Have you fly through balloons?
Yeah, well, it was Pittsburgh was having the celebration. It was a really unique year because the Pirates and the Penguins and somebody else also won. So there were three sets of they all won their pennants. And there was this great big festival and celebration down on the point, and there was all kinds of stuff going on, and the station asked me to fly and talk about what was happening and to give them some added spice. And I'm flying around in this little tiny circle over the top of the triangle, and as part of their big thing, they were releasing a bunch of balloons.
Oh, no.
And I'm like, dudes, you need to warn me before you're going to drop those over onto me. They're helium-filled. They're going to come up and they're going to mangle my prop.
Sure.
So needless to say, I had to skedaddle out of there when I saw that. Anyway, we'll come back to that. John, from PSL. How can I help you, sir?
Good morning, Rabbi. I think you're making some excellent points, and I love your opinion.
Thank you, and thank you for calling.
And I don't really recall very much about the good book mentioning race. It mentions a lot about nations, but not race. But in the scientific world, the classical way of looking at race is physiological. That's why we try to. I learned at an early age in school that there were three races. Now, of course, everyone's going to laugh at these, but there's Caucasoid, Negroid, and Mongoloid. But those are physiological terms, not the way they're applied today. They could be archaic terms. But when you mention, for instance, Semitic, when you say anti-Semitic, well, Arabs are Semitic. It's not just the Jewish people that are Semites. So I always found that term kind of ridiculous. If you want to be anti-Jewish, you could say I am an anti-Zionist, but anti-Semitic, you're kind of lumping two groups of people together. But, words change, phrases get used, like people of color. That's another ridiculous term because black is not a color technically in the spectrum of physics. White actually is not a color either, but it contains every color in the spectrum. So when you say people of color, who are you really excluding? Now, I know they want to exclude white people, but, one of the vice president candidates today bowed out, and she said, well, I think it should go to a person of color. Well, excuse me, Miss, I don't want to mention her name. You are a person of color. And if you go to the beach and you get a tan, I guess you really would be considered a person of color. So you see how ridiculous this gets?
Yeah.
My question to you, though, is in the Bible, does it get into race very much? Because I don't remember it.
No, it doesn't. It does talk about different tribes and different people. In fact, this last week there was a discussion, and it'll come up again we have a cycle of reading things. So let me recap for a moment, John. You were talking about the old phrases of Negroid, Caucasoid, etc. Those are artificial constructs based on the appearance of somebody.
Physiologically, yes.
Well, their skin color is different, but that's all.
No. Characteristics. For instance, Mongoloids have a certain eye feature. When you hear that term today, you think of a retarded. I shouldn't use that term.
You think
a Mongoloid child, a deformed child, even maybe that's a bad term too. I'm getting hot water,
yeah.
But anyway, you know what I mean. But that's not really the true definition of Mongoloid. It's not a Mongoloid child who has a birth defect. It is the characteristics of the Asian race.
Because of the Mongols that moved through the area and gave some of those features into the gene pool.
That's why our American Indians are actually from the Mongoloid.
Yeah, because they came across the land. Well, we all have that in us. It wasn't just pottery that moved up and down the Silk Road.
Well, you just brought up an excellent point. We're all part everything.
Yeah.
I'm sure if I go back far enough, I have Negroid in me, or I might have Mongoloid in me, and it's ridiculous to classify it.
But again, those are artificial constructs when you look at how little of the genome is really involved. Right. That's the point, John.
And it's time. Yeah. Well, you're making a good point, but in its time, we're talking 150 years ago when these terms were first brought up, because all we had was our eyes to look at someone to classify that they had different cheekbones or their eyes were slanted, and the white race didn't have slanted eyes. So that's why they came up with these classifications, I would assume.
Well, because they wanted some way to keep the slave population down. They wanted some way to keep the indigenous peoples down.
Let's divide this. Okay, you're right. Yes, there were peoples that hijacked the science, because there were true scientists that did not have nefarious goals. There were scientists that were in the idea of just trying to find out, going back, the races of people. That is something they truly wanted to do as a science.
Yeah, they wanted to, but now we know that it's just like trying to separate right-handed and left-handed. Not going to work. Okay, you can't isolate and call some of those not human. The object of racialism was to designate certain quote unquote races, which, so racialized individuals, as less than completely human, as somehow inferior. It's getting into that eugenics kind of thing, John. And so if we look at that, let me finish. If we look at that, that's how it was used. Yes, people looked with their eyes and they said, "Oh, okay, you look different from me," but you could use the same artificial construct. It wasn't done, but you could use the same thing to isolate blondes, to isolate brunettes, to isolate redheads. There's probably more, again.
To classify birds, to classify mammals, to classify any object on the earth. That's the science of it.
Okay,
I understand where you're going. I'm not disagreeing with where you're going, but I'm just saying, originally speaking, because you're getting into racism. Racism, when I was a kid, it used to mean in the dictionary that my group of people were physically and mentally superior to your group of people. Now, I don't know.
That's racialism.
Huh? I'm sorry?
That whole concept that based on somebody's skin color, somebody is better or worse. That's eugenics, and that's exactly the problem. That's racializing.
Okay, well, you can say the word racializing. I learned it as racism. Okay?
I understand.
But I don't know anybody today that thinks that way. I don't know anyone.
I wish I could agree with you, John.
Colin Powell is a lot smarter than me. I'm a white man. He's a black man. I can't do what Michael Jordan does. So physiologically and mentally, I just named two people from a different class of people that I cannot be superior to. So I can't think of anyone today. So when people use the word racist, it is a word that means nothing today because it has been so overused for anything that it means nothing.
Okay. John, I appreciate your concept. Racialism, as it was practiced years ago, was an artificial construct based on the appearance of folks. And you raised the issue of a famous general, of a famous athlete, and certainly Hitler had to deal with the contrast of a famous American athlete challenging his Aryan superiority.
Jesse Owens,
yeah, right. So there are wonderful examples of everything along those lines, and the point is that while races is not valid, there are not distinct races. There is either racism or racialism. I'm choosing to use the word racialism, and maybe that's my push. If I can change anything, either locally in the discussion or, God willing, larger, is to point out that it is an artificial construct that has been applied with the intention that you're describing, John, to ascribe superiority or inferiority. But I'm going to counter you. You say you are not equal to that general or that athlete. No, not in athletics and not in military strategy and tactics, because those two individuals excelled in those areas. But you have your own gifts that you bring to the table that nobody else can bring. There is nobody on the planet who is not worthy, who is not capable of bringing something to the table if they choose to do it.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay.
But, the thing is, in the Constitution, everybody says all men are created equal. Yeah, created equal. But that doesn't mean I'm going to grow up to be president of the United States or be a smart scientist or something. I accept where God put me on this earth, and I accept the plan that he has for me. And just because some people are smarter than others, and that's not a bad thing. Some people are smarter than others. There's a lot of people that are smarter than me. And I have no problem with that. I don't feel like I was discriminated against or put down. I came from a poor family. My parents worked in factories. My father never made more than $18,000 a year. But,
that was good money back then.
I'm not going to boo-hoo, the rest of my life because I came from a poor family. I was blessed with a wonderful family that had plenty of love.
Well,
so
that's
this whole idea of division. I'm all for you because I'm tired of the black community, and I'm not talking about the black people. I'm talking about their leaders always trying to divide us. And I think that's going to be a downfall
I don't.
for this country if we allow it to happen.
Okay, John, thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you for all the points that you've brought up. And John just brought up the point of blacks who try to divide. It's not just blacks who try to divide. It's whites who try to divide. It's Christians who try to divide. It's it's that. It's anybody who tries to do that. Right? You know, there's a bunch of myths out there. You might not think of this as a big issue, but here are some of the myths that have been going around the internet. Blacks have thicker skin than other races. Well, first of all, again, it's one race.
Yeah.
You know, so racializing that way, that's not true. They have the same amount of skin as everybody else. There's another myth out there, and this, you know, medical students thought these things, and it's not like ancient history. We're talking about recent surveys that were done in incoming medical students.
Wait a minute, back up. You've got to be
No, I'm not. I wish I was.
That's real scary.
Yeah.
That is real
Yeah.
scary.
A couple of medical schools have run some recent surveys, and they are scary. This idea that people who have the least little bit of dark color in their skin feel less pain. Excuse me? You know, I happen to be somebody who has a reasonably high tolerance of pain. But if you compare me to somebody next to me, they might not be, there have been people who have screamed at the nose swab and others who say, it tickled a little bit, right? And it's not divided by race. It's divided by individuals and their perception of their pain threshold. You know, it's like when I went in for surgery, I had an ovarian cyst removed, oh gosh, probably about 10, 12 years ago. Huge cyst. I mean, the pictures of me before and after are dramatic beyond words. It was a 60-pound cyst, so kind of know it was there.
Brother.
Yeah,
Ouch.
I kept wondering why I couldn't lose weight. My doctor,
That'll do it.
You want to talk about prejudice? My doctor looked at me and said, "Oh, you're pre-diabetic. You just need to go on a diet and start exercising and take some insulin."
Oh no.
And it wasn't even supported by my blood work. My family does have a tendency to slightly high triglycerides. Okay, so we're gonna dance near that. My mother, in later years, did go over and become a diabetic, and I've been so far pretty, thank God, lucky. I do watch my diet a little better than she did, and there was a time when I had time to exercise. I haven't done enough of that lately, but let's come back to that. Right, that was a prejudice. And when I was in the hospital, they said to me, when do you want to have pain meds? And I said, around 7 or 8. If I'm really telling you that I'm in agony, then I will ask for a pain med. But don't just automatically plunge me, please. I'd rather be coherent than in La La Land. And it turns out that I'm actually don't.
La La Land is not all that bad.
I understand that, and some people enjoy being there. I'm not one of those, and so yeah, it's like I tell people. People say to me, "You don't drink." I say, "I don't need to. I don't have the kind of inhibitions that stop me from having a good time if I'm at a party, coronavirus notwithstanding." So.
With a mask, of course.
Well, and I do. I have these stylish...
And you have your mask.
I have my stylish mask. Oh, hear the sound difference? Yeah, I'm going to have to speak louder if I put a mask on, right? So that's one of the ones that I do.
We actually had a guest from IRSC, the campus on Avenue D, who was wearing a mask during the show.
Yeah, and I'm debating whether to wear it during services tonight. I haven't to this point. But I'd like to make...
Now, is the temple open? Are you going to have live?
We have live streaming every Friday.
No, I know you have live streaming.
Yeah, we've had live streaming all along.
Right. But I mean...
We're not running out and beating the bushes and telling everybody to come in, no.
Okay.
We're not going to do a revivalist kind of Friday night or anything like that.
Oh, you're not going to Tulsa this week? Oh.
Yeah.
Never mind.
Yeah. Anyway, so... And that brings up a good point, right? That we really could knock COVID on its rear end if everybody wore masks and everybody washed their hands and, worked And I'm one who needs to do that. I have dry eye, and so I'm always poking at my eyes. And you can hear me getting nasal now. I've got wonderful postnasal drip and a deviated septum and all those other wonderful things that.
Well, you're also dying of Clorox poisoning in here.
Yes, and I am sensitive to chemicals like that.
We actually use the natural stuff here for you today.
Thank you. I do appreciate
It's just the residual that's got my eyes
well, and
watering.
it does. The natural actually lifts the residual chlorine out there. So, and that doesn't even begin to get to the chloramine gas and all those other things that can come out from those cleaners that people poison themselves with every day. There is something called outgassing, which means that bottle of Clorox sitting on the table over there is putting a little bit of itself into the air. That thing of Lysol is putting the first cousin of Agent Orange into the air. You didn't know that Lysol is chemically
that
related?
Once about a year ago, and I'm thinking,
research that.
Where did that really?
Yeah, chlorine is a weapon. Hello.
Yeah.
It's toxic, right?
Yeah.
And if you mix some of this stuff, yeah. Hello. And we wonder why we're being a little bit weakened over time and a little less intelligent. Some of that's chemical poisoning in our bodies. Yeah, so getting out there and breathing some nice clean air, very important for a lot of reasons, if we can find some clean air. We don't have it as bad. It's kind of funny. I teach Chinese students. We've talked about that from time to time. And a couple of them, for various reasons, have shown me pictures of their windows, and China is much cleaner than it was a year ago.
That's amazing. Yeah.
I actually have screen prints. Some of those kids have views that I'd die for. They're gorgeous, and they're getting prettier and prettier over time. That's one thing that people should really do. We talk about Wuhan, and people think of this little back market, dirty alley. This is the trade center of China. It has got some of the most
10 million
beautiful
people or something?
Yeah, it's got some of the most beautiful architecture. It's at the confluence of two rivers, which brings us back to
Pittsburgh.
You're getting to know my routine, right? And so I did this traffic watch thing. Okay, so let's go back to that. And I can understand the desire of the media to want to be sensational, because, among other things, it gets really boring saying traffic is flowing nicely through the Fort Pitt tunnels. You can expect a 5 to 10 minute delay coming through the Squirrel Hill tunnels. I don't see much problem there. Clear shot into the city. You get tired of that. It's a 2-minute broadcast and you're done because everything's moving. And, so you're kind of like up there saying, I really don't want anybody to get hurt, but please, a traffic accident somewhere, or something to delay traffic so I can talk about something.
You could do a traffic report at the Roosevelt Bridge now.
Yeah, now you can.
Oh, brother.
Yeah, talk about a traffic jam. That's probably the biggest thing that I notice, and maybe I'm sensitive to it as a former traffic watch pilot. We do not have a lot of alternate roads to go from A to B.
No.
In the Treasure Coast.
You think of, Carol brought it up this morning when we were talking about it. The little bus services out of Martin County, the Marty bus, comes up to the mall. Well, good luck. You're going to have to go all the way
around. Now you're going to have to
around.
go back around either over Citrus or over that back road that comes into
Indian
Becker.
River.
Yeah. And play around. But, that's one that's amazed me. And I don't know how many decades it's going to take to get a crossroad going across at Becker.
Oh, boy.
Because of the private property involved there.
Mm-hmm.
But that would be a big help to traffic if there was a cut through at Becker. I'm sorry, and I apologize for whoever's wonderful sanctuary I'm hereby desecrate. Take it off of Becker, take it up over so you minimize the effect, or make a tunnel under them or something. But there needs to be access for people. A tunnel might be an interesting thing.
Ooh.
They probably could do that with some deep bore,
Well, let's see.
If they can.
18 years of environmental studies for the Crosstown Parkway
But
Bridge.
that's why I'm thinking a tunnel might not be as big a deal, depending on how and where you bring it up and out.
Wow.
It might take some good engineering, So true confessions. I'm a mechanical engineer, not a civil engineer, and you know the difference between a mechanical and a civil, don't you?
No. What is it?
So a civil engineer is embarrassed when things move, and a mechanical when they don't. All right. And that is the difference, right? We're dealing with machines and movement and stuff like that. And then there are the specialties within it, such as fluids and airs and things like that. Air is a fluid. She does remember her BSME.
Wait a minute. Back up. Air is
a fluid. You can pour it. You can pour things in it. It moves like a fluid. It's a gas, but it's a fluid. It's a suspended fluid, thanks to in most places except possibly for Arizona. But
was it Nelson Rockefeller who once said in New York City, "I will never trust air I can't see"?
Yeah. that would work in Beijing. Never mind.
Well, no, Beijing, Mexico City,
Yeah.
L.A.
Yeah.
And what's really funny, have you seen that thing on Facebook? The shots from India. Where
with the dolphins.
seeing,
Dolphins are coming into the canal and things like that.
Well, not just that, but you can actually see the Himalayas from the city, which you haven't been able to do that in 60 years.
Wow. Yeah. We need to do some real deep soul searching.
It's not just us.
No, we as human beings.
Yes, there you
right?
go.
Not we
there
as Americans, but we as human beings need to do some soul searching. And if we can do this, if we can clean it up, what that means is that when humans die off, that the system will recover. That's the good news. It's still healthy enough if we don't mangle it further. Or so toxify it that it can't regain its balance. But the fact that it's trying to this quickly is a clue, right? So it's kind of interesting. On that note, I've talked about my little Ohio trees, and I've got one in my front. It's a golden rain tree. But I've got one in my front yard right now, and I saw its baby in my flower bed. So it and I are going to have this talk about where else it can grow.
Okay.
Because that one's a little too close to the house. I don't need it trying to get into the foundation.
I was going to say, that could get a little
it could be fun. So, we need to be mindful in our environment because nature will try to take back over. And so we could knock, right, COVID on its rear end if we did that, if you've been in contact with somebody who's tested positive, please stay inside, test yourself. And tests are important. And no, the testing isn't the only, I'm not even going to get into that.
No, the only reason that numbers are going up is because they're testing.
They need to test. They need to do more, the countries that have curtailed it, right, China's curtailing it. Yes, they have another resurgence going on, and they're curtailing that. Again, it's not a backwoods kind of hick place. This is a tremendously vibrant city. And Asians, fortunately, are very quick to put on a mask. And that's one of the reasons why I did, these couple of design things that I just did these doodling.
That's very cool.
Yeah, that took like maybe 3 minutes to color the logo from our congregation on it.
Okay, that's nice.
Then this one with this big design on it, I had to submit grades. Final grades were due yesterday for Summer A. And you have to sit there at the computer while it churns through and it updates each student record, and you're not allowed to log off until it says successfully submitted, blah, blah. And so I doodled that one actually in that time it took for the computer to tell me that my job processed. Yeah.
Wow.
So I was kind of, just a couple of magic, the Sharpie permanent magic markers. And these, by the way, let me tell you about these masks. These masks are awesome. This is from the Florida Department of Health. They gave us this giant box that's in my car, and we're going to be giving them out. We have, of course, our third Friday dinner tonight, which is awesome, and we are feeding the first responders, which reminds me I have to call them as soon as I'm done here to arrange the time for pickup for them. because they come over and pick those up with their cool fire truck, and we get to snap a picture.
That's
and
neat.
Yeah.
And thank you, 2Js.
Thank you, 2Js. 2Js has been an amazing partner working with us. We're going to continue to do this even, in 2 years when we come out of the coronavirus.
Come on.
First of all, so that brings back to the point I was making earlier. But again, we are giving these masks out. So if anybody has a shortage and cannot get their hands on masks, please let me know, because you can come and swing by the temple tonight and pick one. Pick a couple up, actually. We'll give you 3 of them, so that you have, as they said at the health department, you have one clean, you have one that you're wearing, and one that's in the wash. And with that, Curtis has called in on line 1. Thank you, Curtis, from Port St. Lucie.
Yeah, good morning, Rabbi. Can't remember your last name, but I do know Rabbi.
That's good. I answer to that. It's Rabbi Shafir Lobb is my name.
Okay. Yeah, I'm glad to hear somebody like you talk about masks and stuff of that nature, because I've been saying all along, because I've got nephews and nieces that are in the medical profession, and that's the only reason why they can go home at night protected and not catch everything that every patient in there's got is the mask. And the patients will not contract anything from them.
Yeah, right. That's
and the people, and just like I heard you say a minute ago, if we wore those things, we could knock this in the behind and go on about our business. We want to see football and baseball and basketball this year.
People do.
So that should be incentive enough, and your grandkids and all of that should be incentive enough to let's get on with this thing and get it done.
I agree with you, Curtis. Thank you for that. And Curtis reiterated what I said, which is if we would wear the masks and wash our hands, the infection rate would drop down below 1, which is what it needs to die out. So, and there I go, touching my face. So thank you for that call, Curtis. Appreciate that. And you're right. And as you pointed out, the medical field wears them as much to protect the patients from the stuff that the doctors and nurses have. And, that's the big thing that I am learning from my Asian students. They consider masks just a part of clothing. And I was talking.
That's interesting.
I was talking with 2Js, and we were talking about masks, because of course their staff wears masks, and the manager there shared with me that one of the things that he's enjoying now is that people are starting to realize that you can do some style with masks. They can be a fashion statement, right?
Miami Dolphin masks.
Yeah.
Oh.
And any of those IRSC masks.
Sure.
Anybody, anything. These are great. These are 3-ply, and they've got silver whatever in them to help reduce that. And again, thank you to the Florida Department of Health. They contacted us. I didn't contact them.
Very nice. Yeah.
And said, we see that you're active and trying to help, and we'd like to help you help.
That's great.
Because they heard that I was actually soliciting masks for people, which I was. Because that's the other side to this, which is that, we talk a little bit about poverty. Masks have gone from, pennies a piece to dollars, right? $15, $20 to a mask.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous. People cannot afford that.
Well, if you get the logo masks from the NFL, I think those are like $20 a pop.
Yeah, but, the idea there is that you're doing the logo.
Oh, I know.
You buy logo anything, and you're paying to make somebody in the sports business rich.
It's very interesting that you say a couple years, and I know you were mildly joking on that, but...
no, I'm not.
there were 2 candidates running for mayor in Tokyo who said, forget about the Olympic Games next year.
Yeah.
Let's just pass to the next group. And I thought, whoa.
Yeah. Well, the Asian economics have been so hit. They know they have to dig in deep into their pockets. America hasn't gotten there yet. We have not figured that out. We have not made the shifts that they're making. They understand flu and viruses a whole lot better than we do. Like I said, the kids there all are comfortable wearing masks. They've been wearing masks. The rule in the Asian groups in the Asian countries is that if you don't feel 100%, you put on a mask and nobody makes fun of you. Nobody asks you, oh, are you sick? People just, you choose to wear a mask that day. Maybe you've got a slight extra tickle. You woke up with a little bit of a sore throat because your mouth fell open. There's all kinds of reasons to do it. Many of them can't afford to stay home, so they do go out, but they know to take extra precautions. And so, yes, we do see a number of viruses and infections that come out of that area because of the confluence of different animals that live in the area. There are animals that tend to have these, just as the rhesus monkeys have something. Different groups have different things.
So you've got your mainland kids. Do the kids that you have from Hong Kong also wear masks?
Oh, yeah.
They do too.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Hong Kongans. I'm not sure what they call themselves. The Hong Kong kids, and I've got a number of them. They're wonderful students. And, there's the view that I got of Hong Kong the other day out the window. Is like, it's been years and years since I've been there. They are really, I didn't think they could build.
Was it a harbor view?
It was off. It was one of she lives on Fortress Hill. So the view out her window is just to die for. She could buy and sell me 13 times over, I'm sure.
My.
And she has shown me a number of her masks, that particular student who showed me the picture out the window. And, and she even wore one of the classes. She says, I'm home on lunch. I'm like, how are you going to eat with the mask on? She says, I'll take it off for that, but I wanted you to see my mask because I like this one. Right? So
That's
they've got
cool.
they've got a really different attitude about it. It's a fashion statement for them. And, they have them matching the clothes. And like I said, the guy at 2J's was saying that one of the things that he's liking is that the staff and the servers are wearing their masks as fashion statements now. And his comment was, we're starting to have some style around here.
I like it. Yeah.
If we could take that attitude. Now, obviously, if you have a real problem breathing, that's one thing. And you need to be careful if you've really got a problem breathing, how and where you mingle anyway. And you should be social distancing, right? That's the other key, right? Is the social distancing. Get outside of droplet range, and but I will tell you that the other day I was wearing my mask. This is a couple of weeks ago, and I was in Publix, and I do have this post-nasal drip that you can hear my nasal twang today, and it was acting up, and I will spontaneously cough as a result of it a couple of times a day. And this one time I hit one of those, just two little quick coughs in Publix. Boy, I'll tell you, it cleared out the aisle like
20 heads turn looking at you.
They turned the other direction and
split.
Yeah, split. So I had clear reign to do anything I wanted to do for shopping. But I was wearing my mask.
There you go.
And, the people who say to me, I'm going to take my mask off so I can cough and sneeze. No, that's the point of the mask. And again, that's why the health department says give people 3. I've got 3 here, right? So that you have
so
one
cool.
to wear, one that's clean in case you do sneeze and soil it. And, you can wash it out. You can also put a filter inside them so that in case you do sneeze, that, you mess the filter up and not the mask. And then one that's in the wash. And hopefully you'll get the one in the wash washed before you have to go to the one that's clean at home. So, I think that if people start to do that, and again, we've got free masks that we're giving out because the health department gave them to us free. So if you'd like those, we do have them for you. And I know that others in the area are doing it as well. Great big, like I said, great big box. Wonderful. Thank you, Florida Department of Health. So, so here's some perspective, though. Let's get real as we come close up on the top of the hour. That last year, in 2018, 3,300 people, a little bit more than that, died in St. Lucie County.
Okay.
Okay, that's the official death toll on the statistics.
Just of anything?
Of anything.
Okay, gotcha.
That's accidents, that's heart attacks,
right.
That's cancer, that's, whatever the leading cause of death was. And, And is it tragic that 40 people have died in St. Lucie from COVID? Yes, it is. It's very tragic for them and for their families. Again, we need to adopt these things not because of COVID, but because contagions are out there and we should not be giving them to each other. Right? It's a bigger issue. It's a bigger issue. Some of those folks, that 3,000 and some, and I don't know the numbers for 2019, they're not finalized yet, or I'd quote them. But yeah, you can see as Port St. Lucie's population increases, St. Lucie County's death rate goes up from 2,000 10 years ago, 2,000 and some, to 3,000 and some per year. And that makes sense if you think about it. Look at how many people there are and the age group in our county. We're not a young county. We're an older county. We also have disproportionately more women catching COVID. And I think that, again, reflects our population. Now, what isn't reflecting our population is the number of blacks and Hispanics, right? Because those represent the lower income, and it also represents, particularly in the black community, a comorbidity because they're not able to get treatment as well for other viruses, and we haven't yet found an answer to HIV. Right? So you've got folks with that comorbidity that are very, very weakened to this virus. And so we see they are being infected and dying at 2 times their population percentage. That's, to me, significant. That is both an economic and a couple of other issues involved. And when we start, if we're gonna start to really live as human beings, as God, I think, intended us to live, then we're going to have to address some of those economic issues. Right? We need to recognize, yes, blacks of any shade can get skin cancer. They can sunburn, and it's not just on their palms. Right? They are not more tolerant to the pain, and they are certainly not immune to the virus. And some of these myths go to both sides. Both sides believe them. Jews are not a race either. Now, you can't easily change your skin color, although some people have done more or less of it. Like you said, you can go out for a deep tan, and some people will look very, very dark.
Copper tone. There
you go. And some will do it in a tanning bed. That's even more dangerous. So, yeah, we need to get over this idea of racialism. We need to get to the place of recognizing all human beings have gifts to bring to the table, and we need to address the really underlying issues of poverty, of lack of education to the youth, and a lack of stimulation to very young children. Because when we stimulate young children, when we enrich their environments, then we really dramatically change the curve for those individuals. So there you go. This has been Ask a Rabbi. This is Rabbi Shafir Lobb of Congregation Eitz Chaim. Thank you for that wonderful music, cluing me that we're right there at the very top. So please join us on Facebook Live any Friday night at 7:30 p.m. And in a couple of years, we'll be back up and functioning. Please do wear your masks and wash your hands. Thank you.
You've been listening to Ask a Rabbi with a mask on WPSL, Port St. Lucie, the talk of the Treasure Coast, webcaster to the world.